You're listening to Driven Confessions, the place where I drive, and you listen. Tonight I have 3 stories for you. 3 real people who were here one day and gone the next. No explanations, no answers, just questions that have haunted investigators, families, and strangers on the internet for years. Make yourself comfortable, because once you hear these stories, you won't stop thinking about them. Let's begin. Story 1. Maura Murray. She drove into the night and was never seen again. February 9th, 2004. It was a cold Monday night in New Hampshire. A 21-year-old college student named Maura Murray packed her car, said nothing to her roommates, and drove north on Interstate 93. Nobody knew where she was going. Nobody knew why she left. And nobody has seen her since. Maura Murray was, by most accounts, a normal young woman. She was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. She was smart, athletic. She had a boyfriend named Billy Rausch, who was serving in the Army at the time. On the surface, her life looked fine. But in the days before she disappeared, something was wrong. On February 5th, just 4 days before she vanished, Maura was involved in a minor car accident near her university. She hit a guardrail. The damage was small, but it was enough to be noticed. She told no one about it. Then on February 7th, 2 days before she disappeared, Maura made a series of unusual moves. She went online and looked up directions to multiple locations in New Hampshire and Vermont, places she had no known reason to visit, ski resorts, quiet rural towns, remote areas. She also looked up information about renting a condo. The next day, February 8th, Maura emailed her professor. She said there had been a death in her family, and she needed to take time off. There had been no death in her family. She was lying, but nobody knew that yet. She withdrew $280 from an ATM, almost everything she had in her account. She bought alcohol from a local store, wine, Bailey's, vodka. And then she packed her car and she left. On the night of February 9th, around 7:27 p.m., a school bus driver named Butch Atwood was driving his route on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, when he saw something that made him slow down. A black Saturn had gone off the road and crashed into a snowbank. Butch pulled over and walked toward the car. Inside, he saw a young woman. She seemed disoriented, maybe shaken from the crash, but physically okay. He asked if she needed help. She said she was fine. She said she had already called for help. Butch offered to let her wait in his warm bus. She declined. He went home, which was just nearby, and called 911. The call was logged at 7:46 p.m. Police arrived at the scene roughly 10 minutes later. The car was still there. The alcohol was still in the car. Her belongings were still in the car. But Maura Murray was gone. She had been standing on the side of a road in rural New Hampshire in February, in the dark. And in the 10 minutes between Butch calling 911 and police arriving, she had vanished. Investigators immediately began searching the area. The woods on both sides of Route 112 were dense, dark, and in the middle of winter, brutal. Search dogs were brought in, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing, not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single trace of Maura Murray. The case immediately raised questions that nobody could answer. Why did she lie to her professor about a family death? Why did she withdraw all her money? Why did she drive to New Hampshire specifically? Why did she buy so much alcohol? What was she running from, or running to? Over the years, the theories have multiplied. Some believe Maura simply walked into the woods that night, overwhelmed by whatever was happening in her personal life, and died of exposure. New Hampshire winters are unforgiving. The temperatures that night were below freezing, but no body was ever found, and the woods in that area have been searched repeatedly. Others believe someone stopped on that road in those 10 minutes and took her, a stranger, someone who saw a young woman alone in the dark and made a decision. This theory has never been proven, but it has never been ruled out either. There have also been whispers over the years about people in the local area who gave inconsistent statements to police. A man who lived near the crash site, who investigators found interesting, but never charged. None of it has ever led anywhere. Maura's family has never stopped looking. Her father, Fred Murray, has spent years driving those same roads in New Hampshire, putting up flyers, talking to locals, trying to find anything that might explain what happened to his daughter. To this day, he has found nothing. As of today, Maura Murray has been missing for over 20 years. She would be 41 years old. Her case remains one of the most discussed unsolved missing persons cases in American history. And on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, the spot where her car went into that snowbank, people still leave flowers for a woman who walked into the dark and never came back. We'll take a breath here, and when we come back, I'll tell you about a young man in Minnesota who called his father from a dark road at 2 in the morning and was never seen again. Story 2. Brandon Swanson. The phone call that should have saved him. May 14th, 2008. Marshall, Minnesota. It was late at night when 19-year-old Brandon Swanson got into his car after a party and drove toward home. He never made it. Brandon Swanson was a normal 19-year-old kid. He was finishing his first year at Minnesota West Community College. He liked the outdoors. He was described by everyone who knew him as cheerful, laid back, the kind of person who never caused trouble. On the night of May 13th, Brandon went to a party with friends near Lind, Minnesota. When the party ended, he got in his car and started driving home to Canby, about 20 miles away. It was a familiar route, a dark, rural road he'd driven before. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. At around 12:30 in the morning, Brandon called his parents. He told them his car had gone into a ditch. He wasn't hurt, but the car was stuck, and he needed help. His father, Brian, immediately got in his car and drove toward where Brandon said he was. And here is where the story becomes something that will stay with you. Brian stayed on the phone with Brandon the entire time he was driving to get him. They talked for over an hour. Brandon kept describing his surroundings, trying to guide his father to his location, but nothing Brandon described matched anything Brian could see on the road. Brian drove through Lind. He flashed his headlights. He honked his horn. Brandon couldn't see him. Brandon honked back. He could see lights in the distance he thought were his father, but they never connected. For over an hour, a father and his son were somewhere in the same dark Minnesota countryside, completely unable to find each other. And then, at 2:30 in the morning, in the middle of a sentence, Brandon said, "Oh, and the call went dead. Brian immediately called back. No answer. He called again and again. Nothing. He drove through the area for hours calling Brandon's name. When the sun came up, he called the police. Investigators searched the area where Brandon's car was found, stuck in a ditch on a rural road outside of Lind. The car was there. Brandon was not. What followed was one of the largest searches in Minnesota history. Over 1,000 volunteers, search dogs, helicopters, dive teams checking every body of water in the area. For weeks, nothing. Then on June 17th, over a month after Brandon disappeared, a partial human remain was found near the Yellow Medicine River, about 25 miles from where his car was found. It was identified as Brandon Swanson, but the cause of death was never determined. The medical examiner could not establish what happened to him, and the question that haunts his family to this day: what did Brandon see in those final seconds before the call went dead? What made him say those words? And how did he end up 25 miles from his car? Brandon's disappearance actually changed the law in Minnesota. His parents advocated for what became known as Brandon's Law, which requires law enforcement to immediately begin searching for missing adults, rather than waiting the standard period before opening a case. Before Brandon's Law, police could wait before acting on a missing adult report. Because of Brandon, that changed. His memory lives on in that legislation, but the answer to what happened on that road, on that dark Minnesota night in May 2008, has never been found. One more story tonight. This one takes us far from America, to a beach town in Bulgaria, where a young German tourist made a decision in an airport that nobody has ever been able to explain. Story 3, Lars Mittank, the man who ran from nothing. July 2014, Varna, Bulgaria. A 28-year-old German man named Lars Mittank was supposed to be flying home after a beach vacation. Instead, he ran, and he has never been found. Lars Mittank traveled to the Bulgarian beach resort of Golden Sands in early July 2014 with a group of friends. By all accounts, the trip started normally. Sun, beach, the kind of summer holiday young people take every year. But toward the end of the trip, Lars got into a fight, a physical altercation with some other tourists, reportedly over a soccer argument. He was hit in the head. The injury seemed minor, but a local doctor advised Lars not to fly until he had been checked out properly. Flying with a possible head injury can be dangerous due to pressure changes, so his friends flew home without him. Lars stayed behind alone in a foreign country to wait a few days and get cleared to fly. He checked into a hotel near the airport, and that is when things started to get strange. In the days he was alone in Varna, Lars began acting differently. He called his mother multiple times. He told her he felt like he was being followed. He told her that men were after him, that he didn't feel safe, that something was wrong. His mother was worried, but she didn't know what to do from Germany. Lars also did something unusual during this time. He asked the hotel manager if he could check the manager's room for hidden devices. He seemed convinced that someone was watching him, listening to him. The manager let him check. They found nothing. Lars was not reassured. On July 8th, 2014, Lars Mittank went to the Varna airport to finally fly home. He had his bag. He had his ticket. He appeared to be on his way home. But then, at the airport, he turned back He went to the airport medical office instead of his gate. Security footage shows him sitting in the waiting area of the medical office. Then, a man in a yellow shirt walked into the building. Lars looked at him, and then Lars stood up, dropped his bag, and ran. He ran out of the medical office. He ran through the airport. He ran out of the building entirely. Cameras captured him climbing over a fence at the perimeter of the airport grounds, and then he disappeared into the fields beyond. His bag was left behind. His phone, his passport, his money, everything, left in that waiting room because of a man in a yellow shirt. Searches were conducted in the area around the airport. The fields and woodland beyond the fence were searched. Nothing was found. His family flew to Bulgaria. They searched. They pleaded for information. Nothing. The theories around Lars Mittank are numerous. Some believe the head injury he sustained in the fight caused some kind of neurological event, a psychosis or paranoid episode triggered by trauma to the brain. This would explain the fear of being followed, the paranoia, and the sudden panicked flight from the airport. Others have noted that his behavior changed dramatically after the fight and believe something more than a minor injury happened to him in Golden Sands. There have been claimed sightings of Lars over the years, in Romania, in Germany, in other parts of Europe. None have been confirmed. His family has never stopped looking. His mother has given interviews describing the agony of not knowing. Is he alive somewhere, living under a different identity because of whatever broke inside his mind in those days alone in Bulgaria? Or did something happen to him in those fields beyond the airport fence? The security footage of Lars running, dropping everything, and disappearing has been watched millions of times online. People study his face in those final frames, trying to understand what he saw, what he was so afraid of. That man in the yellow shirt has never been publicly identified, and Lars Mittank has never been found. Three people, three roads that led to nowhere. Maura Murray, who walked into a New Hampshire winter and vanished without a trace. Brandon Swanson, whose last words to his father were lost somewhere in a dark Minnesota field. And Lars Mittank, who ran from something only he could see and was swallowed by the world. Their families are still out there, still waiting, still hoping that one day, someone, somewhere, will finally have an answer. Thank you for driving with me tonight. I'm not done telling stories. Come back next video, and we'll go somewhere darker. This has been Driven Confessions.